I've been having some technical issues tonight, so thank you for bearing with me. We're gonna get back into this live stream and then kind of talk about some more of these two ways that are getting signed, and then we'll call it a night. But first, I just kind of want to just say this. There's a lot of stuff on Twitter that's just getting out there in terms of the two ways versus the Exhibit 10s. Just to be clear, if you don't know what an Exhibit 10 is, an Exhibit 10 is the type of contract that a player can sign, and that means that if they play at least, I believe it's usually about is it 30 games typically, they then get a 50k bonus, and so those are really incentivizing to bring in, if you're on draft a guy, because you pretty much could be making up to like 100k a year versus a G League contract that pays 40 to 50k ish. So, it's a big thing. But remember, each NBA team is only allowed 4 Exhibit 10 affiliate player spots. So if there's guys from the G League from last year, you're going to see them trading to get those returning rights for guys from previous years in the G League. Or if there's guys who maybe were in the NBA this past year and couldn't get an NBA contract during free agency, they're making a comeback through the G League. That would be also an affiliate player. So remember, these teams only get 4 of these affiliate player spots. So just something to keep in mind as you're kind of looking at Twitter. If you see a teams where it's 3 guys are getting this Exhibit 10, that means they can only sign one more of an undrafted guy, because an affiliate player, it pretty much means they don't own the G League rights of that player. They didn't have any pre-existing rights previously, unless if it's like a player who played like 2 or 3 years ago in a G League. Typically, those rights expire. But anyway, just wanted to talk about that. Get straight back into it, into this video. Hopefully, I won't have any more technical issues. Thank you again for bearing with me. So look, we're gonna talk about here the next two-way contract guys. So we were talking earlier about was it Tamar Bates, I believe? Yes, Tamar Bates. So he signs a two-way with the Denver Nuggets. I see someone here. How are the Pistons going to do? So okay, here we'll pivot here. So Pistons right now, they have Ron Harper. Ron Harper Jr. So they have Ron Harper Jr. They have, let's see, who are the other two ways? Actually, here let's look at this really quick. So Detroit Pistons two ways. Let's kind of see, because they didn't make. I think they had Chaz Lanier from Tennessee who they drafted. I'm gonna be curious to see if he's gonna be on a two-way or not. Is it Trusty Chaser? I don't know if he will be. The question is if they have a roster spot for him. So the two ways right now are Ron Harper Jr. and then Tolu Smith. And it looks like and Denise Jenkins. So that's what the situation's looking like. You have a point guard, you have a guard, a forward, and Ron Harper Jr., and then you got a big man in Tolu Smith. So we'll see, because here's the thing, like a lot of these teams are making these big decisions right now to go out and sign guys. It's kind of a smart thing to do, but maybe the Pistons are kind of just weighing out to see who's available, not only just for this draft, but who they could look at for summer league, who from their summer league team they could sign to a two-way contract for the fall. So I think that's going to be the thing to kind of monitor with the summer league roster, because that tells you some of what the interest is that the Pistons have, what they're looking for, potentially for two-way contract spots. So anyway, just hope that kind of helps. But yeah, kind of getting a little bit back into Tamar Bates here. So I'm going to look at a little bit, see what type of position he plays. I was talking about this in the part 1 video, but it seems that the Grand Rapids Gold, the Denver Nuggets, they typically go out and have gone like a point guard, a wing, and a big man. We saw it Braxton Key, Colin Gillespie, um, Jay Huff in the previous year, in the 23 to 24 year. And then the 24 to 25 year, we see they get PJ Hall, Spencer Jones, Trey Alexander. Similar situation. So Tamar Bates, I'm going to look at his position. I'm not too familiar, but okay. So he's a point guard, shooting guard out of Missouri. He's 6'5", he's 195. See if I can find his stats really quick here. Um, but it makes me wonder, like, are they going to be bringing back Trey Alexander, who was the rookie of the year for the G League? And so, if not, like, Trey Alexander could get some interest out in, with other teams, and he could be maybe playing summer league with a completely different team. So, let's see. So Tamar Bates, his stats are he averages at Missouri his past season 13.3 points per game, 2.6 assists, 2.6 rebounds, 1 assist, 1.3 steals, and zero point 0.1 blocks. He shoots about 39.7% from three, so almost 40%. So he's a good shooter. So okay, so that's interesting, especially when you have like a player like Jokic, who if he can shoot really well, or you can kind of plug in for Jamal Murray at times. I think this seems like a really good idea for the Nuggets, because Jokic can pass him the ball, he can shoot it. So yeah, I like this signing by the Nuggets to go and get a guy like Tamar Bates on his two-way. But yeah, okay, let's kind of go back into seeing who else in this who else is being signed to two-way contracts. Let's see. I think I saw something here. I'm just gonna go to Jonathan Givony or Devoni, who does the Draft Express on ESPN. Or Givony, okay, or Jonathan Givony. Okay, so let's see. I know I saw some other stuff earlier. Okay, here's something. So CJ Huntley has agreed to a two-way contract with the Phoenix Suns. So Huntley has a strong pre-draft performance that started with an impactful performance at Portsmouth Invitational Tournament. So okay, so that's interesting. So the fact that the Suns they've agreed to a two-way with CJ Huntley makes me wonder what's the situation with Jalen Bridges. I know Ty Washington's still there. You have Colin Gillespie. I think Colin Gillespie is probably going to be staying with the Suns. He had a really good second half, with the Suns, especially with all the injuries he came in and played. I don't know about Ty Washington. There's a new coach now too, in Phoenix. So that and also a new owner, like new management, like with Brian Gregory. So this could be, it'll be interesting to see what they decide to do. But if CJ Huntley is coming in here, then look, the Suns seem to draft. I'm gonna kind of pull up the draft. When I was watching the draft today, I was thinking about the picks that they're making, and I'm wondering how many of these guys are going to be rostered, how many of these guys are going to be going, in as a two-way contract. Do any of these guys end up playing overseas as like a European draft and stash? Like that was something I was very curious about, seeing what the Suns did. So I'm gonna see if I can find. Let me go back and pull up the draft order for the second round, because I think there is some important things to the second round today that we need to talk about. I think if the second round, what was interesting was, there were some players that were drafted who are going to be on two-way contracts. If you look at the Grizzlies, for example, the Grizzlies decide to go draft Javon Small, and if you kind of look at their track record, we've seen that like Cam Spencer last year, he was a guy who did get a two-way contract. Look, the thing is, you get a two-way contract player, it's an opportunity to also get that contract converted and become a guaranteed or get on a non-guaranteed, but like at least a 15-man roster spot, moving forward for the next season. So I think that's something just to kind of keep in mind with these guys signing these two-way contracts is, even if they are taking a two-way and they're not getting the 15-man roster spot, you look at Quinton Post. He got an opportunity this past season with the Warriors to get his contract converted, and then he ends up staying. He ends up playing a lot with the Warriors in the later half of the season. So just something I thought was interesting as we kind of look at this draft. But let's see, I'm gonna go. Yeah, ESPN here has the draft order. So I'm kind of going back to the Suns' point. Is I'm curious to see if all these second round picks that the Suns end up taking today, you know who's gonna be there like moving forward. I mean, so let's see. Phoenix drafted. Okay, so Phoenix. Let's see. This is telling me. Okay, so they had Rasheer Fleming, who did go to Phoenix. Um, they also traded for Kobe Bria, who's shooting 47% from three from Kentucky. So He's someone I'm curious about. Is he going to be on a two-way with Phoenix? I guess we'll find out. As we get closer to summer league and this fall. But we see he gets traded to Phoenix, but he gets selected by them. Um, so okay, so yeah, the question is, with Ty Washington, with Colin Gillespie, Jalen Bridges, will they be back? I guess we'll find out. I mean, if they have potentially two guys who take up two-way contract spots, maybe Gillespie is the one who stays. Um, this for this upcoming year, and then Bridges and Ty Washington, and those two guys, maybe they're the ones who aren't back with the Suns. But I think this is an important year to keep in mind for a guy like Ty Washington, because Ty Washington, he will be going to his fourth year in the NBA. This is his last year of two-way eligibility. So where he is playing the summer league or this fall, if he gets another two-way contract, this is the last year, because then after that, it's harder for some of these guys to try to get on a 15-man roster spot because they can't sign more two ways, and so then they might have to start looking at like maybe going overseas. If you look at Mac McClung right now, Mac McClung actually still had a year of two-way eligibility because he didn't actually sign a two-way contract the 23 to 24 season. And so because of that, he still is eligible to sign one more. So we'll see. Like, you never know. These teams can still find guys like Mac McClung, or guys who they really liked from the previous G League season to sign on a two-way for this upcoming year. I'm going to keep kind of looking at seeing what else is being reported by Jonathan Givony here. Let's see. Okay, interesting here. So Max Shulga from VCU, if I'm saying his last name right, has agreed to a two-way contract with the Boston Celtics. So this is interesting because the Celtics, they also drafted, I think, is his name was it Amari Williams from Kentucky? There was another big yes, Amari Williams. Okay. And he will be on a two-way contract. That's what they've said for next season. So, these are two guys. That means that if you're bringing in two players for the Celtics on a two-way, that now really comes down to, you had an open two-way spot in Boston because of the J.D. Davidson conversion, it's like later in the year. Now, what about Drew Peterson? What about Miles Norris? One of those guys will not be back with the Celtics, and I think that's going to be interesting to kind of monitor. Miles Norris actually signed a 2-year two-way deal. Again, two-way contracts are never guaranteed; they can be cut at any point. Um, but it just makes me wonder, like, like what is going to happen with Drew Peterson. I thought Drew Peterson had really great points, great flashes with the Celtics this past season. So, we'll see what happens with Drew Peterson and Miles Norris. I'd imagine if both of these two guys are getting those two-way contracts with the Celtics, I guess Miles Norris and Drew Peterson could be competing for that last two-way contract spot. Maybe going to the summer league, going to this fall into training camp. So just something to kind of keep in mind with the Celtics here. And so something I thought, I'm kind of now looking more back at the second round here too, is that the Knicks selected Choles Mohamed Diawara. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing last name here, but I'm going to look a little bit into him here. Knicks second rounders, we've kind of seen in the past, they'll typically go after guys who, usually end up signing a two-way contract. We've seen Ariel Hukporti, we've seen what's his name, Jericho Sims. We've seen I think even Miles McBride. I'm actually gonna look that up really quick to see if he signed a two-way when he went undrafted or not undrafted when he got drafted by the Knicks in the second round. Um, we've seen that trend that Leon Rose typically has been doing. I mean, Kevin McCullough, was also a guy that they also decided to. Okay, actually, Miles McBride was not on a two-way in the second round. Um, he was drafted 36. Okay, so maybe not every single player, but the past 3 to 4 years, I think a lot of your two-way contract players who've been in the second round have typically been getting a two-way contract. So Ariel Hukporti, Kevin McCullough Jr., um, even I think was it the year before, or we talked about Jericho Sims. Um, so that is again a possibility we could be seeing if they end up signing. If they signed this guy from what was it from France, the Knicks. Uh, yeah, Mohamed Diawara. So yes, we will see if the Knicks sign him to a two-way contract, because you still have Kevin McCullough Jr. on a two-way. So that that's something you have to kind of monitor as you're going into this next off season. Um, so I think we talked about this in part one, but just talk about really quickly here. Timberwolves have also agreed to a two-way contract with their draft pick in the second round, Roko Zikarski. Um, it's interesting because you look at again Jesse Edwards. You have him on a two-way. It makes me wonder if he's really going to be coming back. But yeah, let's continue to keep going here. I'm kind of looking here at what Jonathan Gavoni said, what we've already covered. Okay, here's something. So Dylan Cardwell has agreed to a two-way contract with the Sacramento Kings. A 6'11", hyper-athletic big man brought elite toughness, defensive intensity, and finishing prowess to Auburn's Final Four team. So this is interesting. That the Kings are bringing in a big here, on a two-way. I think. Look, I think this makes me wonder: is Isaac Jones going to be back next season? Like this is a completely new management coming into Sacramento here. We can already tell that they're trying to change things up. And look, every time I talked about this like earlier that when there's new management, these two-way contract players, the way to get utilized, the way the G League gets utilized with the NBA affiliate, it changes. I feel like in some ways, and Dylan Cardwell, sorry, my apologies, Dylan Cardwell coming here, I think is going to make me wonder: is Isaac Jones going to be back? We will see. Um, Another player that they still have is Isaiah Crawford. And look, these were two guys, Isaiah Crawford, Isaac Jones, who are, these are guys who just won the G League championship this past year. So, it'd be interesting to see where these guys end up if they don't return to Sacramento this upcoming year. Um, let's see, continue to keep looking at these other two-way contract spots. Let's see. Look, I'm gonna check to see what other reporters. Okay, just see what other things have been being put out there. Okay, let's see. A lot of Exhibit 10 deals are happening right now. Okay, so Chicago Bulls are signing Caleb Grill on a two-way NBA contract. Okay, so I don't know much about Caleb Grill, so I'm gonna look him up really quick. But your current two-way contract players in Chicago, you have Jameer Young. What was interesting is, I believe Chicago I think they drafted a center too in the second round, because you waived Adama Sanogo last season, and you know you needed another big after you did you made the decision, I thought it made sense ultimately for him to get a center in the second round today. But um, let's see here. So Caleb Grill, okay, I need to go look him up. But yeah, you have Jameer Young, you have EJ Little as your guys on a two way. I know they had somebody else. Actually, let me look really quick. Bulls two way contract. But yeah, so let's see. Okay, so I'm checked from the last season. They had Jameer Young, EJ Little, oh, and Emmanuel Miller. Okay, yeah. So those are your three two-way contract players. It's still the same management, so they still all know these guys. EJ Little was a guy who it was with the Pelicans like not this past season, but the season before. He was hurt. I believe his rookie season he had a torn ACL. So that I think that was something that he had really had to fight in training camp to get that two way. But we don't know out of these three guys, who's going to be back. If I wonder if Jameer Young will be back with the Bulls. I really like Jameer Young's game. I've seen him play a couple of times when he was with the Grand Rapids Gold and they played against the Capital City Go-Go. So let's see what happens there. But I think okay. So I'm gonna look him up now. Caleb Grill. So Caleb Grill. I'm gonna read a little bit about him here. So Caleb Grill, he went to Missouri. See if I can find his stats. Um, so actually, okay, maybe I don't know if it's okay. So I'm seeing mixed things here on Twitter, but it might be a Caleb Grill is signing Exhibit 10 deal instead of a two-way contract. So I guess I'll kind of find out more officially in the coming days. But Caleb Grill, he's averaging 13.7 points per game, getting 3.6 rebounds, 1.1 assists, 1.7 steals, while shooting 39.6% from three. So it's just a guy to maybe look at closely. A guard who's 6'3", 195, out of Missouri, could be a potential two-way contract player. With the Bulls if he has a really good summer league, good training camp. So we'll kind of see like what they end up doing there. Um, and so another thing, the Thunder end up drafting. The Thunder end up drafting their second round pick, um, and I believe they drafted a forward. I'm gonna go back and check the board here. So the Thunder drafted Brock Bar Barziner, Barnazer from is it I believe Nevada University. Or sorry, my apologies, Northwestern University. See what I'm looking at here at ESPN's rankings and analysis. It's kind of read you his strengths here because I believe that they're saying that he's going to be on a two-way contract with OKC. So teams are drawn to his diversity. He's a great rebounder, a capable playmaker, and produced a surprising number of steals and blocks thanks to all his college all-out style of play. And then Brooks's weaknesses is that his jump shot is a major question, 30.9% from three, and he was never particularly efficient in college, raising concerns about how much offensive value he'll be able to provide. So yeah, I think this is interesting for OKC if they are indeed putting him on a two-way. I do think this means Alex Dukas. I don't know. I wonder if he'll still be with the team. He did have an injury during the summer, and like he didn't really play a lot with the OKC Blue, Alex Dukas. So I don't know if what his situation is going to be with the Thunder. He's a shooter, and if they are putting Brooks Barnizer here on a two-way contract, then I don't know if Dukas will come back. You also have who else? I believe you have Adam Flagler, who if they bring him back, he'd be on his third two-way contract with the Thunder. And so that is something you have to also kind of be asking yourself. Do you bring Flagler back? I really like Brendan Carlson. I really thought that was a great signing for the Thunder when they went out and got him this past fall. So I would imagine I feel like Brendan Carlson could be back with the Thunder. I mean, we don't know yet. We'll find out the summer league roster, but maybe. But yeah, let's see what the Thunder decide to do after summer league. I'm gonna keep kind of looking, but I think we're getting kind of close, probably to the end here. I'm gonna look a little bit more at the draft picks here. I'm kind of talking about Jameer Watkins, out of FSU. So I look. What's interesting is because I followed the Capital City Go-Go a lot the past 2 seasons, and I think I like the idea of them drafting a player in the second round because we saw what they did with Tristan Vucevic, who they did draft in the second round. He did come to the States, quicker than they thought, but they were really happy with his improvement and his growth, and they did give him, like, I think it was a 15-man roster spot, but then they just re-signed him to a two-way contract really last summer to play with the Wizards and the Go-Go this past summer. So I thought this was interesting that Wizards decided to draft a guy in the second round. My guess is he'll probably be on a two-way contract, with the Wizards. And here's what's interesting: if you're the Wizards here, and you get Jameer Watkins on a two-way contract, you know you have Tristan Vucevic on a two-way contract. What do you then end up? Do you have only one more two-way contract spot left? So then you have to really be thinking, like, are they going to, because their strategy, I think, the Wizards is they've been really good at finding guys who, they go undrafted. It doesn't feel like the Wizards typically sign guys who go undrafted to two ways. It feels like they target guys who, played in the G League maybe prior years or have at least been in the G League for a year and then look at considering him for a two-way. We see Jordan Goodwin as a good example of that. He's somebody. Justin Champagnie did that. A similar thing. Jared Butler. So it just seems like that's the strategy. And so you have Jalen Martin, who's also on a two-way. You have JT Thor, who's also, well, actually JT Thor is not on a two-way anymore. He's actually out of two-way NBA years in terms of eligibility, so he won't be back with the Wizards. And so, you have that. You have to keep that in mind. So, that's how you're able to go out and get, Jamar Watkins, because you have a potential two-way spot now with JT Thor not being eligible for any more two ways. Now that he's played 4 years in the NBA. So, what do we do with Jalen Martin? Does Jalen Martin return for next season? I think some things you have to kind of look at very closely. But yeah, I think I really like this draft pick that the Wizards decided to do. I think when you're a rebuilding team like the Wizards, you want to be looking at talent and you want to be looking at who can help you in the future as you're making this championship run. Kind of like what OKC did. I mean, they went out, got Aaron Wiggins in the second round. They went out, got Lou Dort, who went undrafted. So, whether any of these guys got drafted or not, it really at the end of the day is about the journey. And so I'm trying to look here if there's anything else really to talk about here. I think I'll just kind of end some quick things. It seems Alex Tuhey from NBL Australia. He was traded to the Warriors. The Warriors drafted him. I believe he's a forward, like from NBL Australia. He's a very interesting situation. So it makes me think that the Warriors could re-sign, or not re-sign. They'll put him on a two-way contract potentially, to then maybe they'll convert him kind of like they did with Quentin Post. I know we were talking about that a little bit earlier in this live stream, but he's just someone to kind of monitor. Your current two ways, with Golden State, you got let's see, you got Braxton Key, who's not two-way eligible anymore. He's out of days. So Braxton Key, who I think they did convert Braxton Key also before the playoffs. So, Braxton Key. So pretty much they had an open spot because of Braxton Key. They also have Jackson Rowe, and then they also had Taron Armstrong as your two guys on two ways. We'll see about Jackson Rowe. I don't know if he'll be back with the Warriors. Maybe he still will be for next season. Taron Armstrong, he's a guard that they got out of NBL, but he didn't play at the same team as Alex Tuhey. I think Alex Tuhey played for the Sydney Kings. I believe Taron Armstrong played for the Tapins in NBL. So different teams, but still both from NBL. So, but yeah, we'll see if the Warriors decide to sign, you know, Alex Tuhey to a two-way contract, or if they decide to roster him, or they decide to stash him maybe overseas or in a G League. It's just very different with each of these players. Like, each guy's journey is different. I think that's the beautiful thing about seeing things like the NBA draft is we get to see how, regardless of your draft status, the cool thing is seeing these guys' journey. As soon as the draft's over, it begins. So I think that's pretty much it for this live stream. I yeah really went at it with information. But Summer League is gonna be fun. I'm really looking forward to seeing what's gonna happen. The Summer League. I think, to my understanding, Bronny James and the Lakers versus Cooper Flag, the Mavericks. Like, yeah, I'm hyped as a fan. So yeah, I think that's it for this live stream. And this is the NBA 2K G League show, and I hope you have a great night. Peace.